Buying a car is one of the most universal experiences an American can have. It's something that binds us together, especially when that experience ends up being universally stressful. So, what does buying a car look like during a pandemic? Turns out it doesn't look like it's much fun. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau keeps a record of all the complaints submitted by consumers on vehicle loans and leases in their consumer complaint database. We took a look at the database during the pandemic, and people aren't happy with their auto lenders. Actually, consumers haven't been happy with how auto lenders have been behaving for a while. Here's what our report found. More than 2,800 auto loan complaints have been submitted since March, which is the highest 5-month spike in the history of the database. Complaints about being denied auto loan payment relief surged to pre-pandemic volumes. And since March 1st, more than 1 in 5 auto loan and lease complaint story narratives have mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has exacerbated issues that existed before and has brought them to the forefront of our attention. But it's not as if the government didn't know that these issues were out there. Actually, 8 out of the 15 most complained about companies have already been subject to CFPB enforcement actions. The top issues include deceptive add-ons, high-pressure sales tactics, broken billing and payment systems, harassment over money collection, and my personal least favorite, yo-yo financing. Okay, what is a deceptive add-on? We're talking about service plans, insurance products, extended warranties. They might even try to get you to join a motor club. But the big issue is that they'll convince you that you need to buy these things and that you'll get a better deal if you buy it right then and there. But chances are you don't need them, and you're going to end up spending money on things you don't need. As for high-pressure sales tactics, you've probably heard of this one. Car dealers and lenders will manufacture situations in which you're incredibly stressed and overwhelmed. A classic situation is called the box, where they stick you in a room and they make you wait for hours and hours and hours. Broken billing and payment systems are websites that are down, poorly maintained, or refuse to accept your payment. Consumers that have complained to the Consumer Complaint Database have remarked how ridiculous it is that these companies are making it really hard to pay them. Almost half of the 5,000 complaints on auto loan debt collection are about harassment from debt collectors. And in October, the CFPB, which is the same government agency that keeps track of all these complaints, released a new debt collection rule that will make it way easier to get harassed. And last but not least, there is yo-yo financing. Yo-yo financing is aptly named since after you've driven away in your new car, you get abruptly yanked back into the dealership or loan office. What happens is this. You find a car you like, you get financing through the dealership, and they either have you sign on the dotted line or they tell you they're still working out the kinks in your loan, but you can drive away. And after you've left in your new car, you get a call that says the financing has fallen through and you have to return your new car unless you agree to ridiculous new payments or a higher interest rate on your loan. And if you're curious how any of this is legal, it's not. Once you've signed on that dotted line, it's a legally binding document and you should contact a lawyer. I've mentioned a lot of complaints in this video, and everything I've said here are things that people have written to the CFPB about and have consented to be made public. You can even go read their stories for yourself on the CFPB website. So, what happens when you send in a complaint to the CFPB? They've received over 19,000 complaints on vehicle loans and leases since 2017. What happens when you complain? Complaints are incredibly important. The CFPB's database is public, so a complaint there is an effective way of letting the lender know that they've done something wrong and it needs to be addressed. Filing a complaint is your best bet at getting something changed, even if it doesn't end up being everything you ask for. The CFPB keeps a record of whether or not complaints have been responded to in a timely manner and what kind of response was given to the consumer. We've asked the CFPB to make the responses more specific because, as a consumer, you should know how good a lender is at responding to your complaints. And despite some limitations on how company complaint responses are totaled in the database, this database is still helpful to consumers and researchers. It's a window into the way the financial marketplace works. And while the CFPB doesn't act as a lawyer for consumers, filing a complaint that goes into the database is a good way to hold companies accountable due to the fact the database is public and anyone can read the over 9,300 consumer complaint story narratives for vehicle loans and leases. But what needs to happen next? This pattern of abusive loan and lease lenders' behavior shouldn't be allowed to continue. In our report, we ask our policymakers to guarantee loan relief programs during the pandemic, just as loan relief programs were made for housing. If you're buying a car and are worried about all the practices I talked about, we have some great tips on how to avoid and deal with them in our Buying a Car consumer guide. The link to our full report and the guide is below. Thank you very much for watching.